Hello, my name is Michael O'Keefe, aka The Movie Wizard. If you enjoy this interview and want to hear more top-notch film industry conversations, please press the thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell to stay in the know. Peter Kuplowsky, you are the program director for Midnight Madness at TIFF, and I'm very curious to know how much work goes into selecting the movies you decide on each year.
Simply put, I watch about 300 feature films over about 4 months to cohere into the Midnight Madness lineup of only 10 movies.
Jeez, that's intense.
Yeah. It is a lot. It is a lot. And there's a lot of heartache along the way because there's really strong movies being made. And the challenge in cohering it to just 10 films is one of not merely sort of trying to play the best films, but also films that I feel represent the kind, the sort of grand scope of genre cinema. I always look to the Midnight section when I was a fan and in the audience as kind of a state of the union of genre cinema globally. And so it's very important that the section not just represent one genre exclusively like horror or one region like North America, but rather a sort of a global spread of different offerings and different permutations of genre cinema. And so that's sort of the real challenge in looking at and wading through the 300 odd submissions that come my way.
So the Ugandan movie Crazy World is the closing film of Midnight Madness. And I was wondering, how did you personally discover Wakaliwood, and was it love at first sight?
Yeah, I mean, Wakaliwood is an industry, a homegrown regional filmmaking collective from a small village borough of Kampala in Uganda. And it's a group that makes low-budget action movies. And I've been aware of them for years, largely thanks to a man named Alan Hoffmanis, who flew from New York about almost a decade ago and started living in Uganda and started to help translate and subtitle and sort of repackage these action films for international audiences, and specifically for Western audiences. And I had the great pleasure of introducing their last movie, Bad Black, at Fantastic Fest a few years ago, where it actually won the Audience Choice Award against many films who collectively, every Hollywood film put together didn't have the budget of the films they were competing against. And so it was really remarkable to see that despite limited resources, they made such an impact and impression on the audience, and people were so entertained by them. These are films that don't have a lot of money on screen, but they have so much heart, so much enthusiasm, so much creativity. And I've just really been interested in championing these sort of regional filmmaker movements and trying to support them on the festival circuit. And this was a really exciting opportunity to do that at TIFF.
Yes, they're fantastic movies. I just got hip to them this year, and so I want to thank you personally for giving them this platform. It's fantastic. So the Canadian movie Blood Quantum is the opening film, and you've also selected another Canadian movie called The 20th Century. And so basically, since they are Midnight Madness movies, and as you mentioned, you watch an obscene amount of movies to make sure to guarantee a level of quality. I was wondering, though, if you could give your thoughts generally on the current state of Canadian genre cinema.
I think it's getting better every year, and there are more and more productions and more institutions are supporting them. Blood Quantum has telephone money in it. I know that the Town to Watch program that Telephone has started is investing in genre projects that I can't wait to see in the years to come as they get developed and produced. And I'm really excited that I had 2 Canadian films in the lineup, and they're 2 very different films, and in many ways they represent the 2 different extremes of midnight cinema in sort of a traditional sense. You have your films that are straightforward genre movies like Blood Quantum, which is a really, really solid and excellent zombie movie in every sort of definition of the idea of what a zombie movie is, but it has this really unique variable insofar that it is very much about the indigenous community and it's made by indigenous filmmakers, and that's like a really interesting variable that I think gives it an extra edge and an extra dimension to it that makes it very compelling. And then you have a film like The 20th Century that is more comparable to a midnight filmmaker like Alejandro Jodorowsky, because it's just so bizarre and so strange, and is really doing something outside conventional generic parameters. It's really doing something truly original. I recently have been struggling to describe this movie, and I think I've hit upon, it's like watching a live-action Terry Gilliam cartoon.
Wow. Okay, that's exciting. I saw that director's film, the Tesla Project.
Yeah, Tesla World Light. Yeah,
that's right. It was very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he uses a lot of experimental analog film techniques, much indebted to early cinema, very much in the tradition of Guy Maddin, who is definitely a key influence on this filmmaker, which I think is great because it puts it in sort of a continuum of Canadian cinema itself.
Wow. Okay, great. So you've also got Crazy Love, Takashi Miike's latest feature.
First Love.
First Love. Okay, oops.
Yeah, but Miike is back with his 9th film in the section, I should say, because this is actually his 103rd production, because he's one of the hardest working filmmakers, period. And I was so delighted to have a Miike film. I've been a fan of him for years. The audience has been a fan of his. He's so close to 10, which no one has ever. I mean, no one has gotten to 9 films in Midnight Madness either. He's the reigning king of Midnight. But when I went in to go see this film at the Cannes Film Festival, I went in going, expecting to enjoy it. But I also felt like Miike hadn't surprised me in a few years. I thought I had finally acclimatized to, what Miike does, and he managed to surprise me with this movie. It's incredibly endearing, incredibly romantic, and incredibly bonkers. It's as romantic as a Japanese Miike film can be that opens with a decapitation. I will say, anyone who's afraid of because Takashi Miike films can be very extreme, I actually think this is one of his more accessible movies. It's not to say it's tame by any stretch, but it actually is like a very endearing meet cute, just in the key of Miike.
Okay, well that's fun. And will he be walking the red carpet himself?
That is the plan. Yeah, he is. He has been invited, and I believe we expect him to be there walking the red carpet.
That is thrilling. Okay, so Richard Stanley returns with a Lovecraft adaptation starring Nicolas Cage called Color Out of Space. So will this movie bend and then blow minds?
It's certainly a psychedelic adaptation of an already fairly psychedelic cosmic horror text, so definitely can expect a whole lot of spectacular and grotesque imagery. That the movie absolutely lives up to that, and Cage is reliably how should I put this? Reliably unpredictable. Like he truly is making very creative decisions, as he always does with his characters, and it's a real thrill to have an institution like Miike, and then a filmmaker like Stanley, who has played the festival before. But again, like it's been 29 years since we first had him with his very first film, Hardware. And so it's really great to see him return behind the director's chair, or behind the camera rather, and make this film.
Yeah, he had a great. He was on that Blu-ray V, that Soviet horror movie, talking about Soviet horror. So that guy is really smart and cool. So he's an incredible guest. We're so fortunate to have him, and I think of all the screenings, the energy in the room has been palpable when you have Nicolas Cage and Richard Stanley on stage. Like that is that is truly why that's worth the ticket price of admission alone. Much less a really fantastic movie, but that's that alone should be a treat for myself and genre fans. Yeah, I think it's going to be. I don't know. You've seen the movie, but to me, it smells like a really good follow-up to Mandy. I mean, it's actually produced by Spectre Vision, who are Mandy. So I think there very much was an effort to sort of follow through. I think it's a very different movie in certain respects, though. I think it has a different quality to it. But in terms of psychedelic spectacle, you definitely can count on your synapses being snapped a bit. Okay, talk to me about the first-time directors and their projects at Midnight Madness. Yeah, we've got 5 of them, which is amazing. The platform is on the first Friday of the festival, and it's
a dystopia prison movie that I've compared from everything to Cube, to Stuart Gordon's Fortress. Even recently, I was kind of thinking, it kind of reminds me of aspects of it. Kind of remind me of the absurdism of Hitoshi Matsumoto's Symbol, which is a Midnight Madness favorite from a few years ago or a decade ago at this point. But it's just such a really smart concept that I don't even want to tell too much about it. But it's about a vertical prison in which the food is distributed to prisoners in a very unique way, and it's about a prisoner who kind of gets radicalized by his frustrations with the system. And it's unpredictable, and it's a wonderful synthesis of both action, horror, and science fiction in a way that reminded me of Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer. So if you think of all those comparisons I just made and that sort of vague premise, that hopefully gives you an idea of what you're in for. But I really do believe that this is a really exciting new filmmaker from Spain, and I expect to see more from him. Another first-time filmmaker we have is Rose Glass at St. Maud. I think this is a debut that a lot of people will be talking about, much in the same way people were talking about Julia Ducournau's Raw. It's a slow burn midnighter. It's a movie that kind of soaks you in a very palpable sense of dread, fills it with surreal imagery, and then ignites everything in sort of the climax with some pretty shocking revelations and violence. And I think it's really exciting to have that film in the lineup. And then also The Vast of Night is another film that I've been talking about actually all the way since January when I saw it at the Slamdance Film Festival. It just took me completely by surprise. It's a Twilight Zone-esque 1950s period piece about two young people who discover a mysterious signal that they start tracking and trying to figure out its source from. Is it a government conspiracy? Is it aliens? What's so remarkable about this film is it achieves so much within such a limited focus. The camera work alone will actually, I think, stupefy audiences. It stupefied me. I couldn't even believe some of the shots that I was seeing that were achieved in an indie film. And then the performances and the dialogue are so whip-smart and crackling that they just hook you with every single moment. It's a movie that you just become obsessed with its mystery. I've compared it to American Graffiti meets Miracle Mile meets Pontypool. And I really think that the director, Andrew Patterson, is going to be a huge filmmaker in the next few years. Like watching this film felt like watching Memento for the first time, or Brick. I just felt in the presence of wow, this guy is doing some really impressive and bold filmmaking.
Okay, so doing red carpet interviews is incredibly fun and also insanely stressful. I've talked from everyone from Udo Kier to Jamie Lee Curtis, and every time afterwards it's great, but doing it is sort of a nightmare. So do you have any advice for journalists on the Midnight Madness red carpet?
Well, I think we're only going to have one official one this year, which will be Color Out of Space and Mr. Cage. Yeah, and Mr. Cage, I can imagine, will be an intimidating presence. He's certainly going to intimidate me because there's so much personality there. And I would just say, be direct with your questions. You don't necessarily need to load it up with a number of compliments. They know who they are. They know why they're there. But I think it's great to just be direct and also just engage. Do your research, engage them on a subject or a point of questioning that they're interested in. Because often, many of these, especially if they're big stars, there's countless of interviews out there for you to look at and see which questions they responded to, which ones they shied away from. Some actors like to talk about the craft. Other actors like to talk about the text. Some actors are all about anecdotes on set. Some kind of shy away from that. So if you put the research and be direct and friendly and don't start your question with a series of comments, I think you're on the road to a successful interview.
Well, that's helpful. Definitely my favorite interaction was with Keegan-Michael Key. We talked about Rudy Ray Moore, and he said the words, nice. "If I may opine on Disco Godfather," which was kind of amazing. And
well, I mean, you just mentioned another film that I'd be happy to recommend. It's not in my section, but My Name is Dolomite.
Dolomite is my name.
I hope to introduce at least one of those screens. That's one of my goals for the festival, to introduce one of them, because it's a really terrific cast, and absolutely anyone who enjoyed The Disaster Artist or Ed Wood are just going to love this movie.
Yeah, I thought it was definitely going to be a Midnight Madness movie, but, it's cool. It makes room for other movies.
We're spreading the love this year. We're spreading the genre love across the festival. I mean, we've got some really great movies that that I think Midnight Madness fans would love, like The Lighthouse and Synchronic and
True.
Guns Akimbo. We decided to spread things out a bit, and I'm very happy because it made a lot of room for some of these new filmmakers that have made films that are just as exciting, but can, benefit from the value of the spotlight that Midnight puts on them.
That's absolutely correct. Like, I heard Mother was almost a Midnight Madness movie, and then they drew back.
That's true. It almost was. That was a conversation at one point.
Yeah. So let's say people in Ottawa, they hear this, and then they get a bus ticket, they get a Greyhound to Toronto or whatever, or other people hear this, and then they sprint over to TIFF. What can a first-comer expect from TIFF?
I mean, they can expect, I think, one of the most enthusiastic audiences I've ever sat in, and some of the most generous audiences, too, that are open for, challenging new experiences. And there's really nothing like seeing a movie at midnight. I would definitely encourage anyone who can only come down for a few days to pick a weekend, either the first or the last. And if they pick the last weekend, there actually might even be maybe less potential to see stars, but a lot more potential to see more movies. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. But the last weekend in particular, I can say that most of the Midnight Madness section repeats on those last 3 days, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that close the festival out. And quite frankly, if you schedule right, I think you could see 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 within those 3 days of the whole midnight lineup.
Okay, that is excellent advice. So the theater is always packed for a Midnight Madness screening, and the audience is fantastic. What are some of your favorite memories at Midnight Madness screenings?
Oh man, I mean, some people hate them, but I still love the beach balls that get thrown around before the movie starts, and I love the rituals that the audience participates in before the film proper starts, because we do these pre-shows that are thanking our sponsors and our supporters, and the audience really gets into it. It becomes almost like a Rocky Horror call and response experience, and those moments I'm always a big fan of. I have a lot of fond memories of lineups under Colin's curatorship. I remember we had a girl turn 18 so she could go to see a Midnight Madness movie, and she actually helped. She was part of the TIFF Next Wave committee, and she co-introduced Green Inferno with
nice.
Eli Roth, and then Eli also called his grandfather because it was his birthday, and the audience sang "Happy Birthday" to him. That was a real fun audience experience, and I know that this year I've got a bunch of things planned, because I really like, as much, the screenings are all about the movies and celebrating genre cinema, but it's also celebrating the time we have together in that room to celebrate those movies. And so I'm certainly planning some exciting extracurricular activations, so to speak, at some of these screenings that make them hopefully even more memorable and special. And so that's why I always encourage people, definitely see one film at midnight, because it's unpredictable. I mean, last year we had a whole marching band walk in to the end credits of Assassination Nation, and I think that one is going to be hard to top for a while, but we're working at it.
The one story I heard you tell was Sacha Baron Cohen for Borat.
Yes, that's a famous one. I'm knock on wood that nothing like that ever happens to me. But,
right.
That was a situation where Colin Geddes had programmed Borat, and the movie broke halfway through. Not even halfway. I hear it was like 35 minutes into the production, or into the screening, and so many people rushed up to try and fix the projector. Michael Moore got on stage and started doing comedy with a juggler.
Oh my God!
It was pandemonium, and Sacha Baron Cohen stayed in character the entire time and was just screaming death threats at Colin in a comical way, and was also trying to marshal the audience to go and storm another movie theater. Like, it was truly a I feel like the audience may have not seen the whole movie that night, but they got an experience that they'll never repeat.
Okay, so Peter Kuplowsky, thank you very much for your time. Before I let you go, I imagine that each Midnight Madness selection is like a child to you, but which one is your favorite?
No, they truly all are my favorites, but I will say this, because I've talked about most of the films in the lineup through this conversation, but I don't think I mentioned this film yet, and I know everyone asks me every year, even though I don't like to pigeonhole Midnight Madness as a horror section, I get asked, "What's the scary film?
Okay.
What's the Insidious? What's the Oculus? What's the movie that's going to keep me up at night?" And that film this year is what I would say is The Jewish Exorcist, a.k.a. The Vigil, which is on, I believe, Monday night at midnight. And it is definitely one of the scariest films I've seen all year, and a really remarkable, also a debut, first-time filmmaker. But yeah, The Jewish Exorcist is pretty much my pitch for it.
All right, well, there it is. Thank you very much, Mr. Kuplowsky.
Thank you.